Yes, Super Bowl Sunday on the aid package for Israel and for Ukraine. We expect the first votes to happen sometime this afternoon. The new $95 billion package also includes aids to Taiwan and humanitarian relief for Gaza. It does not include anything about the border or immigration policy after Republicans changed their minds about that, being a priority. It's still unclear if this new package actually has enough support to pass in the Senate.
Joining us now is Eugene Scott, senior politics reporter for Axios and MSNBC political analyst and special correspondent for Vanity Fair, Molly Jong of Fast. She is also the host of the Fast Politics podcast. Greetings, everyone. Greetings. So, Eugene, I guess I want to start with you. What do you think about the state of play? I don't know if you had it on your bingo card that the United States Senate will be in session on Super Bowl Sunday.
I did not.
Attempting to pass, security assistance legislation.
Yeah, I think it's been really interesting just seeing the ongoing challenges that Republicans have had getting on the same page about immigration after years of working towards a very specific idea and priorities to have the former president come in and just throw things all over the place. We know when it comes to Ukraine and Israel, there's been more support from GOP lawmakers historically in the Senate for this type of legislation, but it's not really clear right now what's going to happen because there's so many outside forces playing a part.
You've got right now a number of dynamics that are playing. At the center of those dynamics is the speaker himself, Mike Johnson, who seems to be, quite frankly, all over the map. And you can see how those pressures, Simone and Alicia kind of pushing in on this guy a little bit. But Eugene, what is the truth for him right now? You had the Washington Post reporting. It says until now, Speaker Johnson has walked a fine line, professing to be open to passing Ukraine aid while doing everything possible to avoid actually doing anything about it. How long is that sustainable, given, again, those pressures, both from the Senate as in the White House, as well as within his own caucus, to try to get something done?
Respectfully, Johnson can be as open as he wants, but Johnson is not the most powerful Republican in the House. It's actually Donald Trump. And we've seen that repeatedly.
It's Sunday, and he just went there.
And we've seen that repeatedly. And we've seen it when it comes to endorsements. We've seen it when it comes to policy and agenda. And so while he's open, we know that the Freedom Caucus has been very vocal. He has to keep those people on board. There's a very thin majority that he's working with right now. And he has to keep his boss, or it's the leader of his party, happy because we're in an election year. And, Johnson wants a state speaker.
Yeah, at least for a little while.
Yeah.
There's something that I worry, friends, is getting lost in all of this, which is, yes, Donald Trump presented with an opportunity to actually have Congress do something about the border, decided that it was politically more advantageous for him for it actually to remain, in his words, not in mine, chaotic. There's that piece of it. There's the immigration piece of it. There's him tanking that. There's also, though, the piece of this, which is aid to Ukraine and his lack of appetite for aid to Ukraine. And Molly, we know just how close former President Trump is to Russian President Vladimir Putin. For him, there was a duality here of why he did not want to see it move forward.
Yeah, and last night he was speaking at a rally, and he said that if you don't pay your debts to NATO, and already very ironic here, because this is Donald Trump, but if you don't pay your debts to NATO, he might encourage Russia. He might tell Russia to do whatever they want to a non-NATO paying country. And so basically, I think Trump is really a person for whom none of this means anything, right? NATO, this incredibly important alliance that has been part of America, has been sort of one of the tenets of American democracy. I think that it's really Trump has become even more emboldened than he was in his previous run for president. And I think that it's quite scary. But I also think he has more control over this Republican Party than he ever has.
Right, Michael, that has been on full display this past week.
Oh, it has been, absolutely. And that's the reality, to Eugene's earlier point about Trump being the ringmaster here, the leader that's dynamically pulling at the party. Molly, the question I have for you, though, is where is there an escape route? Is there an off-ramp that the leadership can somehow contrive to pull enough Republicans in the House or to hold those who are at least waffling a little bit and sort of reaffirm the courage in the Senate to actually move something done, to get something done finally on Ukraine? And the border is a separate piece. We know that, and that has its own complications. But how are you assessing the possibility of an off-ramp from crazy to actually getting a bill passed?
Well, I mean, this week we saw 2 votes fail in the House, right? What were the votes?
The Mayorkas vote?
The Mayorkas vote, right, where they wanted to...
And the Israel-only aid.
And the Israel-only aid. So those were 2 votes that failed. And I think that's a really important data point, because Johnson took those up because he thought he had the votes, and then it turned out he didn't, right? And Democrats were able to get their people together in a way, and Al Green came out there from surgery, came out of the hospital to vote. So I think that was pretty spectacular. Look, the numbers, I mean, Johnson has a very small majority. And it is, if he were a skilled politician the way Nancy Pelosi was, perhaps that would be, a problem for Democrats. But the fact that he can't math, it ultimately has really served.
Yeah, the Green vote really did show that not only they can't math, they can't do basic counting. The thing that I have wondered about, Eugene, is very often when there is quote unquote chaos on Capitol Hill, it often translates, even if that chaos is led by one political party, in this case Republicans, it translates to voters as pox on both their houses, right? The institution doesn't work. Congress doesn't work. Washington, D.C. doesn't work. I have to believe that the way this went down this past week, where you had members of both parties negotiating over the course of weeks, finally agreeing upon a framework for border tied to foreign aid that they could all agree on, having leadership sign off, and that at the 11th hour, very distinctly, there was no question, they got a call from Donald Trump. That call from Donald Trump changed the whole game. That in the eyes of voters, right, once Dems go out there and they make their case and they do their oppo ads, it is easier to lay this at the feet of Republicans, specifically this specific week of chaos, than other times where we have seen this type of ineffectualness on their part.
That's certainly going to be the talking point that we should expect to see happening this week. We know, Axios, we're talking to swing voters on Tuesday about what happened last week. In previous months, each time something like this has happened, they have said, we see issues with both parties. We can't really identify who has messed up and who's responsible. And whether or not that continues to be their perspective, I think, will be based on how Democrats respond to this. And we've seen Biden already come out and say what he's going to do for the rest of the year in terms of blaming the inability to get immigration across the line on Republicans. If that message doesn't get down to voters, actually, though, things aren't going to work out the way Democrats want.
I mean, I guess, yes, it is. Democrats have to bring their message, but we also just have to tell the truth about what happened. Sure. And I think it's incumbent upon all of us, and on television, in the written press, and the really great newsletters that I hope you read from Eugene, because he's amazing. It's to just tell the truth. And the only reason there was not a deal on the border, the only reason the supplemental is being held up is because of Republicans in Congress kowtowing to Donald Trump. That is, in fact, a fact. That's not partisan language. That is specific. And now when we're talking about the supplemental and the aid to Ukraine and Israel and Taiwan, what we're talking about is most of the money being spent here in America. I mean, the $60 billion they're talking about, $48.4 billion is going to the Pentagon so they can buy weapons from America. I mean, talking about Patriot batteries that are made in Arizona, artillery shells that are made in 12 states in this country. What happened to America first?
That's a good question. Well, this is the whole America First mantra out of the MAGA ethos or echo chamber is all performative. It is not based substantively, because if that were the case, they would, in fact, be supporting this aid to Ukraine, and they would, in fact, have done something on the border. And I think, Alicia, that for me is one of the bigger parts here. Is as Simone says, when you pull it back and you look at it, these are the facts, that you had a deal. You had a deal on the border, but Donald Trump told you to tank the deal because he wanted to take advantage of it politically. Damn the country. Screw the opportunity to actually help those governors on the border who are complaining and concerned, the citizens there. So what's next here, do you think, from the Republican playbook as the pressure, I stay on the pressure thing because I think it's important as that pressure continues to grow to at least get this Ukraine deal done. You had former First Lady, Senator, Ambassador, and presidential candidate Mrs. Clinton say she thought it would get done. So what do you think will happen here?
They're all out of moves. Can we play this sound of Mike Lee trying to turn the tables in this conversation? Because I think it tells us where they're headed. Take a listen.
Extortion is the word I would use because he's trying to get out of Congress something that Congress is reluctant to do by leveling a threat. And the threat is, I'll enforce the border even less than I have been. I'll make this even more chaotic if you don't pass the Ukraine supplemental aid package.
I mean, it is incredible, Molly, like just the chutzpah it takes to have so clearly had something been your fault, have had the opportunity to do this the way that your own party wanted to do it, and then should try to lay blame at the foot of the president. There's one sort of minor truth slipped in among the lies, which is there are resources, there are monetary needs that this Republican Congress has not made good on at the border for an issue they supposedly care about.
Right. No, they need money at the border. Anyone you talk to, on the left, on the right, they need money. They need more judges. They need more enforcement. They need everything, right? This is a problem because it's not being funded in the way it needs to be funded. And this border deal, which was very conservative, by the way, cooked up by James Lankford. I mean, Democrats would have ultimately had a sort of come to Jesus moment on it because it was so conservative that a lot of people in the party immediately.
It was going to fundamentally change the nature of immigration and asylum in this country.
But it was also the first legislation we've had on this issue in 20 years. I mean, it was just like, you know, if you ignore a problem, it gets worse and worse and worse, which is what we're seeing right here. And I think it's just a sort of amazing bit here that Republicans are not taking credit for the fact that they said we will not fund Ukraine unless we fix the border. Democrats then put together a border bill that is exactly what they wanted. And then they were like, no, we don't want this because Trump told us we couldn't vote for it.
Michael Steele, my friend, that was a very long way of answering your question and saying what I think Republicans do next is point the finger back at Democrats, even though it does not add up.
We're good at that.
Eugene,
we should all tell the truth.
Eugene, Molly, you are sticking with us after the break. The crucial special election this week that could shrink